Well, about 20 years ago, if you watched Saturday Night Live, you remember a character named Debbie Downer. And in this, what would always happen is there would be a family gathering or they would be at the table, and good conversation that normal people have would just go back and forth until something is said that triggers Debbie Downer to say something that made everyone uncomfortable. If you know me well, you know that I love that because that's kind of what I do. I'm really good at making people uncomfortable, and I find the humor in that. But this specific scene, the family all goes to Disney World. And they're sitting around the table for their Disney-themed breakfast, and the waiter comes by and tells them what's on the menu and says, "This morning, the special is steak and eggs." And one of the family members said, "I love some steak and eggs." And the camera pans over to Debbie Downer, zooms in on her face, and she says this in a deadpan voice. And this is at Disney World, remember, happiest place on earth. She says this, quote, "Ever since they found mad cow disease in the U.S., I'm not taking any chances. It can live in your body for years before it ravages your brain." And the camera then goes to an even closer view of Debbie Downer, and you just hear in the background the trumpet going, wah, wah, wah. Now, the entire skit, if you've seen this, it shows how she can take a normal, good family conversation and turn it into something that's sad, depressing, not really fit for a fun time. And I've always loved these skits because, I enjoy seeing people uncomfortable to an extent. But here's the thing. What she said was true. What she said was true. But breakfast at Disney World on a family vacation is not the appropriate time to bring that up. It's uncomfortable. And the comedic aspect of truth there is what makes the comedy stick out more is the fact that there is some hints of truth and reality in what she's saying. But no one wants to be around someone like Debbie Downer. No one except, again, for me, when I was that in my rebellious, antisocial, punk rock teenager years. But no one wants to be known for their negativity. Most of us want to be around people who are cheerful, who have encouraging words to give, not talking about mad cow disease when we're about to bite into steak. We don't seek out Debbie Downers in our lives. This would be strange. But we can't, on the same end, discount what Debbie Downers in our lives say simply because we don't appreciate their timing. So this brings us back to the book of Ecclesiastes. For some of us, as we read this book, we're going to get that sense that this is just an entire book that's nothing but Debbie Downer. It's depressing, it's sad, it makes us feel like there's no worth involved in what we do. It makes us feel bad about ourselves. None of the Bible is intended to be a downer. The truth is, all of the Bible, whether it says Jesus' name or not, is pointing to Jesus as its subject. This is the foundation of our faith. But what I've seen over many years as a pastor and much longer as a Christian is that many of us do whatever we can to avoid negativity. So the question that we have to ask when we're reading the book of Ecclesiastes and we see that there's some negativity here, there's some kind of depressing statements here, we ask ourselves this: is there a place for that in the Bible? Well, yes, it's there. So is there a place for that in our own lives? This is a big question. Maybe the best way to introduce this book is to have you think back to your own childhood. I don't know if you watch Sesame Street. I still, truth be told, I still watch Sesame Street. Muppets, puppets just make me laugh. But one of the most well-known segments of Sesame Street is that they would have the screen divided up into 4 quadrants. And you remember the song, "One of these things is not like the other"? Do you remember that? And it would be, like, for example, 4 tennis shoes and a rain boot. And so we watch that and we say, well, of course that doesn't belong, right? The rain boot. Now, a kid, this is how they're learning to differentiate between things that belong and don't belong. Ecclesiastes tends to be that one that kind of sticks out. A book that on its surface doesn't seem to really belong with the rest of what we see in the Bible. And again, surface level, it feels depressing and like there's no hope. But as I challenge you every week, and as I challenge myself every week, read the book in light of Christ. There's hope at every turn. There's hope at every turn of this book, which can be very difficult, which can be depressing, which can bring us to our knees. But that is exactly the purpose of the book of Ecclesiastes. It's to show us that there is no hope outside of Christ. So let's read this together. Ecclesiastes 1, the first 11 verses. Now, if you don't have a Bible, pull it up on your phone. If you're looking in the Bible and you can't find Ecclesiastes, there is no shame in going to the table of contents. We even have to do that sometimes as pastors. But if you're trying to thumb through it, it's in the middle of the Bible, a few books after Psalm. This is what the author of Ecclesiastes says. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the winds return. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. Ecclesiastes, as you've picked up already, is unlike any book of the Bible. There's nothing like it in the rest of Scripture. It's kind of like the eclectic cousin in the Bible, you know, the one that's smart and artistic that we all try to avoid at the dinner table. And so some of us may read the Bible and get to Ecclesiastes and either blaze through it or just avoid it altogether. It's a big task. It's a big task intellectually because you're digging through it, but also it's a big task emotionally because at every turn you're hit square between the eyes with every verse. Everything about it is unique, which makes it difficult to read. But even if you set out diligently to read this book, you'll notice something at the onset that may make you give up. You'll see the darkness here. There are no up-tempo songs that you hear on positive hit Christian radio coming from Ecclesiastes. At least it's difficult to write those. It's not appealing to some. If it were a movie, it would be one of those art house, slow-paced movies where the bad guy wins in the end. But just like in our lives, we can't escape the darkness that's normal. We can't escape bad stuff. We can't escape suffering, death, and despair. Those are all part of life. But this here is why the book is beautiful. There's a pastor, Zach Eswine, writes this about the book of Ecclesiastes. This is a lengthy quote, but this is helpful. He says this: Ecclesiastes offers an exceptional voice to remind us who we are, like Job's friends or Jesus' disciples, that we cannot walk into our own neighborhoods under the sun and hand out a one-size-fits-all shirt. Life under the sun isn't that tidy. Contradictions abound with human beings in the world. The preacher does not shy away from these. We are prone to clean our house before our guests arrive. The preacher doesn't. He lets the house remain as it is. He asks us to see it and to ponder what it reveals about us, our place, and God. By taking up this untidy voice, the preacher isn't using this sermon to describe life as we expect it, or as he desires it, or as what good theology says it should be. Rather, the preacher describes life as it actually presents itself under the sun. It's messy. It's untidy. It's not clean. It's dark. It presents life as it is, not as we want it to be or as we hope it will be. This is real life. It's dirty, depressing, and full of doubts. But this is what a good teacher or a good mentor does. If I stood up here every week and told you how great you are and how God has amazing things this coming year, you're going to hear that if you haven't heard that from some guys. 2026 is the year of your harvest, which, by the way, was really funny to hear that at the end of 2019, wasn't it? 2020 is going to be a great year for you. If I said that every week and I just gave you positive messages and everybody left happy and it's this kind of bubblegum pop kind of, idea of what life is like and you're just kind of floating around every day with a smile on your face, that's not reality. Reality is dark. Reality is tough. Reality is depressing. Reality is bad news after bad news after bad news. I aim to be a faithful Bible teacher, and a faithful Bible teacher gives you what the Bible says and speaks into reality. And if I didn't do that, I would be a failure because I would only give you what you wanted to hear, not what you needed to hear and what I need to hear. I'd be tickling your ears. But the truth is, life is often confusing, it's overwhelming, it's full of nastiness and filth. So how do we answer these questions? How do we deal with the grittiness that's everyday life? I think Ecclesiastes has the answers. I think Ecclesiastes deals with these head on. So before we even dive in, let's look at the author of this book. Whenever we begin a study, we want to know who the recipients are, but also who the writer is, so that we can know the context they're writing into and the purpose behind what they're writing. Now, here's the truth. We don't know who wrote Ecclesiastes. There's no author at the very beginning. It's not clear. But it doesn't take away the fact that it's part of Scripture, that it's been preserved by God and written through His Holy Spirit. Some say it's Solomon. And if it's not Solomon, it was written in the vein of Solomon. It was written from a Solomon-type perspective. So either way, it's coming from that idea of someone who has wisdom and someone who's passing along wisdom to people. What about the theme? Already in verse 2, you may be thinking, well, this really doesn't fit into the Bible. It's pessimism, it's negativity, it's despair. But if you've read this book, you'll see that there's great purpose in this. The author, the preacher, shows the depression that comes from seeking your joy in the things of this world. I can't think of a message that's more relevant than that. This was written probably 3,000 years ago. And it addresses the idea that people are finding their joy and their happiness and their purpose in things of this world and in their circumstances. So relevant today. This book gives us a chance to see the world from the perspective of someone who's trying to find their purpose and fulfillment in everything but God, in things that are temporary. And this is why he begins verse 2 by saying, "Vanity of vanities," says the preacher, "vanity of vanities, all is vanity." That's the theme of this entire book. And what the author is saying is, and this is where it gets depressing, that all of those things that we seek after, all of those things that we fill our lives with, they're worth nothing. Money, power, fame, social standing, none of it is worth anything. And this is why the preacher raises this question in verse 3. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? What do we gain from this? Maybe you've never considered this question before, at least directly, but let me put this into kind of modern speak. What happens to your retirement accounts, your house, your wardrobe, your cars, anything else that you own after you die? Someone's going to rummage through it. They're going to give it away. They're going to keep some, but it's not yours anymore. You no longer have access to those things. All the things that we can collect, they're gone. We have no authority over them after we're dead. And let me bring it even closer. Even if those things were kept in your family, the relics and the mementos and all of those things that you keep, the truth is, after 100 years, no one's going to even remember what you've done. This is a sobering thought that I've had to bring. In 120, 140 years, depending on the age of people in this room, very few people will ever remember who we are. It reminds me of what James says in this letter. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we'll go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. What has all your toil brought you? We work and work to give ourselves a better life, however we may define that, but where does it get us? Everything that is pushed into our face says the way to make your life better is to grab a hold of what you can right now. Keep collecting, keep getting more and more. That's the only way that you'll ever find happiness. Madison Avenue knows that, and we keep buying it. It's here today, gone tomorrow. Are you depressed yet? It's not the aim. But what the preacher is doing is showing us what really matters by showing us what doesn't matter. Every preacher that I know, every pastor that I know, if you ask them this question, they'll tell you the same answer. I've yet to meet one that disagrees. If you ask a pastor, would you rather do a wedding or a funeral? Most people would probably say, well, probably a wedding because it's more exciting. No, every single pastor, me included, would rather do a funeral. Why? Like Solomon says here, or whoever the writer is, it's better to go to a house of mourning than a house of feasting, because at least at the house of mourning, people take their hearts, or they take their future to heart. They think about eternal things. At a celebration, at a wedding, we're just dancing and partying, right? At a funeral, we sit there and we think, that could be me next. This could be my story. People could be sitting around talking about me. You contemplate important things in life. Verses 4-7, we see that nothing seems to change. It's not trying to get us to be depressed, but trying to show us where hope really lies. Generations come and generations go. The earth seems to last forever. It'll outlive us. The sun rises every day and the winds come whenever they want. The water from the oceans are evaporated up into the clouds, which then bring rains to the land, gathering in streams and rivers, which then distribute the water back into the ocean. Cycles happen over and over again, regardless if we're here or not. The point of all of this, one, you and I are not the center of the universe. And two, the world moves on whether we like it or not. This is most apparent when we're in the middle of something terrible. And I found this to be every time I experience something that's unpleasant. I've looked around and wondered, why aren't other people sad too? One instance in my life, I had just received some really terrible news. And so I get in my car and I'm driving home and I'm crying and I'm wondering how I can get out of this situation. Just so you know, don't let your minds wander. I didn't do anything wrong here. But instead of going home, I drove. And I drove and I drove and I got out and I walked around for a while. And I'm seeing people. I was on a college campus and I'm seeing these students and the faculty just walking. And I thought, and this is foolishness, but I looked around and I said, why aren't they sad like I am? They're just going on with their lives like nothing's going on, and my world is caving in. The world kept going, even though mine had come to a stop. I was thinking that I was the center of everything, but I know that I'm not. We know that our lives are short and the world moves on, and it will continue to move on long after we're gone. This is sobering. And like I mentioned before, advertising professionals know how to play on your emotions. What you have isn't good enough. You need something else to bring you happiness. You need a new car. You need a new house. You need a new job, maybe a new spouse. You need something new. But what happens when this newness wears off? This is a deadly drug. See how twisted things get when we don't have the right perspective? When we take our eyes off of where they should be and instead look inwardly. What is it that I need? What is it that I want? It gets twisted. And this leads us to verse 8, which shows us that nothing satisfies. It says this, all things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. In other words, despite all of our hard work, we are never truly satisfied. Our eyes aren't satisfied with what we see, and our ears aren't satisfied with what we hear. When the verse says that man cannot speak anything, it doesn't mean that he can't speak. It's not that he's lost his voice. It's that he's simply left without a response to the unbearable truth that he is not as important as he thought he was. It's devastating news to us. That our life is a mist, it's a vapor that comes for a moment and it's gone just as fast. Perspective. If all that we are after is the next deal, or increasing our bank account, or amassing more power, or gaining more traction, or gaining more followers and people clicking like on videos that we make, if that is our sole motivation, if that's what's giving us energy during the day, we are lost. It's shocking. But we know it's true. How many times have you wanted something so bad that you can taste it, but then when you get it, the high wears off? Years ago, and this sounds silly, but years ago, we bought a van. It's a minivan, and it was old, 6, 7 years old, and it had a lot of miles on it. But it had my favorite thing, not the engine, not anything else. It had buttons I could push, and it had a fancy screen. It's dated now. But I need gadgets. I need moving things. I need technology, and I need to be able to customize everything. And so for 6 months, I researched this van. And I looked, and I studied it, and I test drove them, and I did everything I could, and I was so excited. We got rid of this small car. We had another kid at the time, and so we have 5 of us, and we needed something that had some more space in it. And so the deal came. I found one that worked. I studied the prices. I found one that worked, and I went and bought it. And I enjoyed driving that thing. Spacious, comfortable. Again, lots of buttons. I can customize everything. But after about 2 weeks, it wore off. I moved on. Something else that I wanted. The thrill was no longer there. The exhilaration of buying something that was new to me quickly wore off. So what happened next? Well, I moved on to the next thing that I needed, or the next thing that I wanted to buy. I knew that this was a terrible attitude. But yet I kept doing it. Seeking out the next high or exhilarating moment. But what did I learn in these things? I realized that none of these things that I could go out and get or amass or collect for myself, none of it satisfied. Nothing brought contentment beyond momentary happiness. I get a fix, and the fix wears off, and then I need something new or better, or more gadgets or more buttons. The car didn't work. Nothing works. So we've seen how nothing seems to change and nothing seems to satisfy. Then in verses 9 through 11, we see that there's nothing new under the sun. Now they didn't have cars then, certainly. But they still had stuff. They're human beings, so they're materialistic, just like we are. Get a bigger house, get some more horses, get some more cows, get a bigger field. It says this, what has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there such a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. I'll apologize for something I said earlier, and I'll apologize because I'm going to repeat it again. I don't like it, you won't like this. When you die, you won't be remembered for very long. Just so you know, I'm not coming up with this on my own. I'm not saying this because I want you to be happy and content. I'm saying this because this is what we see in this passage. Your life is short. My life is short. And the odds are that we won't be remembered for very long. None of us in this room. If you're not a follower of Christ, this should lead you to deep despair. All of us want to leave some kind of legacy, right? I can't tell you who my great-grandfather's name. I don't know anything about him. I don't know. I have a family tree, but that's all that I know. I've never met him. I don't know what he looks like. Never heard his voice. And if that's all that I have, what I'm collecting and amassing here, if that's all that I value, one day that's going to be gone. What is all this worth? Why am I doing all of this? This should make you restless and uneasy about your purpose if you're not a follower of Christ. But if you are a Christian, knowing this should give you great purpose, you have perspective that you didn't have before. You can see that through all of those difficulties that you face, there is still purpose. But listen, the purpose is not found in you. This is the beauty of the Christian faith. Your purpose is not you. It's not me. Your purpose is glorifying God and enjoying Him forever. That is your purpose. That is the reason why you exist. Not to gather more things, not to build a name, not to amass, in my perspective, not to grow multiple campuses and have a church that's exploding. That's not my purpose. My purpose is to glorify God. The German pastor in the 1700s, Count Zinzendorf, put it best when he said that our purpose, or his purpose, was to, quote, preach the gospel, die, and be forgotten. I don't know who he is. I've never met him, and I won't this side of heaven. And it's not him that we remember, it's a quote. This is the key difference between a Christian worldview and a secular worldview. A secular worldview says that this is all that there is. You're born, you live, you die. That's the end. There's no bigger purpose. There's no bigger reason that you exist. You're just kind of an accident. They say work hard for this life because once you're gone, you're gone. But the Christian worldview is very different. The Apostle John wrote, if anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. See, we find our joy in a different place, not in our circumstances or our stuff, but rather in the Father's love and mercy. And this is why we study the book of Ecclesiastes. The book agrees with what we already know, but it points to the one who is the answer to all of our problems. Nothing seems to change. Well, God never changes. Nothing seems to satisfy. God promises that He satisfies. There's nothing new under the sun. God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. This book, written thousands of years ago, is just as relevant today as it was back then, and maybe even more so. You have questions about money and wealth? It's answered here. Politics and religion? That too. Friendship and death? Yep. It's all here. So you say, well, where's Jesus in all of this? Where's the gospel? This is just a bunch of depressing things that you're throwing at us. Well, think of this as the beginning of the gospel. This passage does seem to be devoid of the gospel of Christ, at least on a superficial level. But think about this. The world is in bondage. The world is unable to find satisfaction in their lives. Sure, there's temporary satisfaction, but it's a fix. It wears off. And so as we read this, think about the beginning of the gospel, because the last two verses of Ecclesiastes says this. Find hope here. The end of the matter. All has been heard. Fear God, keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. kind of bookending this, the beginning and the end of the story. So if you're finding satisfaction in things or people or yourself, it fails. And you know this to be true. You know this wears off. It is only through Christ that we can find satisfaction that never fails or falters. It is only through Christ answering the complaints made by the author of Ecclesiastes that we can find hope at all. And while all things pass away, one thing remains: the King on his throne. Would you pray with me?